This is episode 3, part 2 of Living Proof, where people who live with pain get to ask the questions and guide the conversation instead of just answering the surveys. I'm Desmond, and this is Emerald, and this episode we're doing things a bit differently. We're slowing down relationality, spiraling time, and honoring evidence. Sacred truths of expertise. In part 1, we heard Vanessa's story, how she spent 25 years bridging Indigenous communities in healthcare. Today, we go deeper into the research itself.
What actually happened when Indigenous healing spaces opened in Western healthcare spaces? What are we learning about how culture and medicine belong together? And what does it mean to weave two relationships into one conversation? The whole week was the weaving. Conversations before the camera, moments between, the space where we were actually building something together. So, you're hearing the research and the relational fiber that holds it. Please listen with that in mind. 2 meetings, 1 episode, woven back whole. The medicine is in both.
This podcast is brought to you by Pepper, Partnership for the Engagement of People in Pain Research. The Pepper Partnership is funded by the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada.
I've had so many visions while we're having this conversation. Actually, I'll share another one. The other one was of a medicine wheel that's not whole. So, like when you're saying that your spiritual self is not feeling whole, then this part of your wheel is like crinkly, for example. Yeah, and you want the wheel to move smoothly,
But it won't.
but it won't because yeah, so that's what, yeah, Desmond's work with the nervous system regulation and all of that. Like the whole conversation, I just kept thinking about like a crinkled up wheel that's trying to get back into place.
We need to make this because I think that's such a powerful vision because people understand the mechanics of how a wheel should work. I always picture for myself being Plains Cree, it's no coincidence that I feel very connected to the medicine wheel because that was part of our contributions, right? And our worldview and ways of seeing the world. So it comes so instinctively and naturally to me that I use it in every day. I draw things, but I've never in my whole life drawn a medicine wheel, like missing a piece or not connected. And so it's such a strong metaphor and visualization because that's how we get sick.
Yeah.
Right? Is that there is an imbalance or there's a disconnect in that wheel because that wheel helps to represent the balance of what it means to be health and well, like physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. They need to be in balance.
But when part of
Something,
it's deflated,
yeah. Oh
yeah.
wow.
And it's a
I
visual
just
representation of how Western medicine is deflating or completely forgetting about part of the wheel. Bringing culture back into the spaces is reinflating those components so that we can just roll a little bit smoother along the way. There's going to be bumps, but if you have a rounder tire, it's going to absorb that a lot better.
let's take that away as something to do. Like, let's all create our version of this visual because I think it's so important. And like, I don't know. I think I'll always think about that now with this conversation. And yeah, no, I thank you for that, for sharing that.
Thank you. Yeah, I
And
have a
another,
post-it medicine wheel on my bedroom wall that I made out of post-its so that I can remember all of the elements and animals and medicines and seasons and reasonings. And I've had moments of filling it out from the center and trying to see which part's deflated and where do I need to put more energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think also, too, in my own personal experience, what's on my mind is that I'm actually in a pain episode of my own right now. And it was triggered last week. And I'm very aware the impact that it's had on my life. And I'm in a position of privilege where I can stay at home and I can be make myself comfortable in my bed and I can call on a partner to support with the child care and things like that. But it wasn't always so. Like I've had many years of difficult and challenging times when I didn't have a lot of answers about what was happening to me in my body. And it's only been relatively recently that I've had a diagnosis, and I'm still navigating through that. I think back to the people who I'm going to be engaging in this research, who are living with pain, who likely may not have the same level of support and resources that I now have access to. And I just remember what that was like and how destructive that the consequences can be when you spend your whole days just trying to manage, and it's almost like you're just in such a deficit that it's hard to get up and out of it. And
Mm,
I can see what that position looks like and feels like, and I think that people need to have a better understanding about how you bring people into a safe place to have that conversation without triggering the very lived realities and experiences of trauma, because we know that experiences of pain, especially with Indigenous people, is deeply interconnected with identity, with indigeneity, with other identities, but also with our experience of connection with the land and the natural environment and in the city.
I'm even thinking about that feeling that you're having of not enoughness, of changing yourself to be in places, and how that, for even participants, other people with lived experience who could be taking part in these offerings that you're creating, and how difficult it is to sometimes even step into the door because you don't feel enough. Yeah, especially like I live in the downtown east side. I'm surrounded by many urban Indigenous people, and how many people almost feel like undeserving to know because they didn't know before. So why should I get to take part in things? Even I'm in a Filipino book club and we're exploring exactly all of these things like our indigeneity and the paths towards that, and people feeling like they don't have the right. They feel culturally appropriative because they're so Western and so removed. And Desmond and I are also both island people
Mhm.
and from different parts of the world, obviously. I use that metaphor often when I'm talking with my community about how you can see that as a strength, that you can be in this place of sovereignty with the community and it's safe and it's contained. And in our case, like it's volcanoes, so it's always nourishing. It's always coming up. There's always more to generate from, and there's enough for everyone.
yeah, I really appreciate that because, for one thing, all of the work that I've been doing in this pain research space is from the space of lived experience. I'm the PWLE co-director because my qualifications aren't through institution, it's through like my 30 years of living with pain and the many things that I've gone through, both the suffering but also the things that did bring those pieces of hope that brought me to this space where I'm able to give back and support people in a certain capacity when it comes to this work. I teach a number of different therapeutic practices. The main foundation of what I do is something called tension and trauma release exercises, and it's a really simple series of stretches, and what it does is it evokes tremors in your body so that you actually release muscular tension from past fight or flight experiences that you haven't been able to complete. This practice that I teach is actually just reconnecting you with a function in your nervous system and in your body that we have all had for our entire lives. Every mammal actually has this nervous system release function, but we've been socialized out it through Western colonial perspective of what our body is supposed to do and what happens in our body, because we don't have any positive reference for shaking in our body in most Western cultures. And so for me, this is like a way of rebuilding relation with ourself and building capacity so that we can feel and experience all of what life has to offer and be able to come back to some capacity of baseline.
And I've been teaching this particular practice here in Vancouver at what's called a 4D spatial sound studio. I call it 4 directions and 4 dimensions. It's an exploration of the medicine wheel through 4 different therapeutic practices that all have components that allow you to check in with your physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual self. And the hope or the intention of that practice is to be able to set a foundation of being able to connect to those spaces in yourself in your everyday life. And I always feel so grateful that I found these practices, because the pain that I dealt with in my early 20s, I didn't feel like I had any hope or potential for anything positive to be happening in my future. And I felt as though it wasn't going to be lasting very long. And finding this particular practice of TRE is the first thing that actually gave me the smallest glimmer of hope that possibly things might be able to change or get better. And when I was listening to you talk about the work that you do, in a certain aspect, that seems to be the underlying thread of that potential to inspire that little moment of hope that could possibly change someone's perspective, where they would then be able to commit because they believe that something might be able to change. Because this perspective sometimes in modern medicine of like curative, like we're looking for a cure, we want to, like, you have this, we're going to find a way to, it's gone forever and you never have to deal with that again, back to normal. And to me, that, as a person who lives with a chronic condition that has no cure, that's not a reality. And so my life and my lived experience is finding tools that allow me to continue finding positivity in some spaces in life, and being able to maybe shift or transition from all of the survival mode of just being able to maintain, and being able to grasp certain moments of thriving and joy and things that I didn't believe were possible at one point in my life in my early 20s. And if you talked to me at that point, like if you asked me when I was 25, where do I see myself in 5 years? If someone asked me, I was like, probably dead. Because I don't see things getting any worse or any better, and I don't know how they could. Because no one had ever given me anything in the name of, there's something you can do about it. It was, take this medication, you have a lifetime prescription, there's no cure for this, and it's always going to get worse. And that was what modern medicine told me. And it wasn't until I broke out of that and was able to connect with an actual understanding of my nervous system, of my immune system, and then deepening my connection with who I actually am and what it is that I'm trying to do in life, and finding certain aspects of purpose, which I'm so lucky to have fallen into this work. It's the soapbox that I stand on as a pain advocate. Like, I advocate for myself. Pay me if you want me to come out, because this lived experience is a lived expertise. People who do pain research but don't live with pain, you get to clock out and go eat dinner and go to sleep and not have to live with pain. You don't get woken up in the middle of the night.
My life.
Yeah, you can theorize about, you can have a body of study or a school of thought to perceive my pain, whereas like this is a 24-hour, 7 days, 365 days a year experience, and has been for me for decades, literally.
So, one thing I've tried to do as an Indigenous health researcher and a former healthcare person is to just say, okay, how can we create conditions that support individuals to not only feel, quote, safe or comfortable, but like we're actually looking to offer some reciprocity for people who share the knowledge that they have. This is very sacred knowledge that they carry. Their lived experience is some of the most powerful data that we have. And so to treat it as sacred, we have to look at how we can offer something to those individuals in return for their time, for their knowledge, for that sharing. In doing new research, one of the factors that we're doing is trying to practice meeting the moral imperatives of Indigenous health, meaning that we're not extracting knowledge and taking it and removing it from the context where it was created. But what we're trying to do is respect and honor the people who are participating. In this case, it could be Indigenous people living with pain, and holding them up as knowledge holders, right? So the information that they're sharing, their lived experience, that's very important, meaningful evidence. It's information that is sacred. And so when they come in and they offer that and they share that, there has to be some way to reciprocate our appreciation for them sharing that. And we do practice certain protocols, like we do offer an honorarium for people's time, but I think that there's other ways that you can practice reciprocity in research. And the way that we're trying to do it is by bringing people into this healing environment and practicing some of those ceremonies with them. And I think that by doing that, people can carry that and see it and feel it. And hopefully it's a healing experience. And that can be something that can help them to grow in other ways, to bring that practice outside of the traditional healing space with them. My belief is always that I can bring in my unique experience and skills and training, but I also need to remain humble and open to the understanding that I'm never speaking on behalf of Indigenous communities, but that rather I'm speaking alongside and seeking to use my relative privilege and positionality to help support people from the community to have their voice be brought forward. And maybe it's through our research, maybe it's by continuing to build on the scholarship that we're doing in unlikely spaces, institutions, hospitals. But either way, like, I think the point is that we're trying to get the message through in whatever way that we need to. Some of us have to be located within these dangerous spaces. I had someone tell me that they see my role as a kimush, which is a Cree word for someone who kind of is almost like a spy or like quietly creeping in these spaces where we don't naturally belong, because our job is to really understand how the mechanics of these environments work so that we can report back and create more space for more of us and build on that capacity. And I'm lucky enough to be appointed to the Department of Geography and Environment here at Western, where I'm one of four Indigenous health geographers or geographers. Like four. There's four of us. It's not, I'm not one of one anymore. And I'm like, wow, like this is a bit of a shift for me. So I think that I'm really excited about the potential of working alongside all these Indigenous geographer baddies who have different skills and knowledge. And like, I don't know what we're going to do in the future, but there's a reason why I was brought here. And I'm just going to kind of lean into that, as uncomfortable as it is sometimes. And I get to mentor the next generation of Indigenous scholars and teach classes on things that I think are important. And so far, so good. I often think about my responsibility when I enter into different spaces and saying, well, how can I communicate this? And how can I be the support needed when the time is right? And it's not always easy. Like I think I still have to find ways to be strategic in how I communicate so that the message is received, especially knowing that as a female Indigenous person, like my voice is not always heard. So I think that there's a lot of like transferable lessons that I've had through that work that I think I need to continue to practice and cultivate through this. And yeah, I think right now my great challenge is learning how to communicate like an academic too, because this is a relatively new space for me. I'm in my third year as an assistant professor at Western, but I'm only a few months out from being a PhD candidate. Like I just finally graduated. So my comfort level was working in healthcare. And Now I am sort of thrust into this new world where it promotes values that are not always the same as my own. So I'm trying to do a better job of bringing in the evidence that I know is required in these types of conversations to make them as I want to continue to have tangible and real conversations, but also do a good job in representing the body of scholarship that also says, like, this is reality.
Yeah, with that, I'm also thinking about just how to make that truly inclusive because we all have different experiences. We're all coming from different places, and Indigenous people particularly are coming from different places and different experiences, and not everyone gets to be welcomed in to their culture or with people or in different ways because of who they are, because of how they present in the world, because of, yeah, the way they speak. I think about this a lot too, like the way people are able to be like platformed because they are, I don't know, easier on the eyes or their voice is easy to listen to, or versus someone who might have something really amazing to say, but the way that their voice sounds is not is not catching. But yeah, like when we're thinking about these healing spaces and making them accessible for everyone, what does inclusivity look like for all people?
Yeah, I think of one of the protocols that I had learned that was quite creating exclusivity and making it difficult or impossible for some of our gender diverse relatives to participate. And that is the protocol around wearing a ribbon skirt. And I think that one of the phrases that I've heard, and it's a simple shift, was that skirts are admired but not required. And I think that even by having that shift itself, I think it started to open up the opportunity for those spaces to be more inclusive for people who may not conform to a gender where wearing a skirt is comfortable or wearing a ribbon shirt is comfortable. And I think that we still have a long way to go and in understanding how to be truly inclusive to our two spirit, trans, indigenous people and relatives. And I think that that's why in my forthcoming study that we are going to specifically invite our trans, queer, indigenous relatives in and have conversations about how they want to be engaged in research itself about pain because the way that we do that may look very different than how we bring in some of the seniors and elders, or that we might bring in adults who don't identify as being two spirit or queer. And so I think that we're still at the we're still at a time where we don't have all the answers about how to do that. We've only just come to a time where we're starting to generate a knowledge base about creating true islands of Indigenous sovereignty within a colonial environment. I think that there's so much more that needs to happen and that should happen, but part of the research shows that we've far outgrown the spaces that we do have and that we need more of that and we need more resources so that we can continue to improve and to build more inclusive spaces. But I have a belief that we can get there. And I think that hopefully by participating in research, formal R research, as I call it, where we're going through the process of ethics as well as relational ethics and accountability, and being able to generate knowledge in that colonial way that we can help to translate it across people who work in the institutions, policymakers, decision makers, as well as share back with communities so that they can use that knowledge to advocate for the supports that are needed to meet their needs. And I think publishing and getting this knowledge out there is an important role. It's something that I've been tasked with in my position, and it's something that I take on with a lot of responsibility and a humility. And I am just hopeful that by even having these conversations, that we're generating knowledge that can start to shift things for the positive and improve conditions for Indigenous people. That's ultimately the goal of ethical scholarships.
Do you want questions in advance or?
If you'd like that, if you have some ideas about what you'd like to talk about, it would be great for me to just try to stay focused. I do tend to talk about things in a more roundabout way sometimes. So I
Linear time is a colonial construct.
There we
That
go.
used to be
yeah,
my email sign out.
yeah, it's true. And so
Okay. Well,
Cool.
we'll get together and dream up some moments for us to have, and then we'll send that over to you.
okay, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Vanessa.
Well, I appreciate getting to know you both, and I'm
Yeah.
excited that we will see each other IRL in Quebec.
Yeah.
Yeah, no
So that's
doubt.
exciting. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I will say it's never goodbye. It's for now, and we say Bamapi, go Guabman, which means bye for now, and just wishing you well.
I love that. My grandpa used to always say bye for now on
Mm-hmm.
my mom's side. And yeah, it's a beautiful sentiment. I love
Mm-hmm.
it. Bye for now.
Mm-hmm.